Ma'am, how much have you had to drink tonight?
I'm sick, I need sugar, I'm diabetic.
Yeah, that's what they all say. Step out of the vehicle, you're clearly intoxicated.
Please, my bracelet,
Save it for the breathalyzer, lady. Out of the car, now.
At 9:43 p.m. on a Wednesday night in Scottsdale, Arizona, the intersection of McDowell Road and Hayden was nearly empty when Dr. Bernice Williams, 43 years old, sat behind the wheel of her silver Honda Accord at a red light, her vision starting to blur, her hands beginning to shake. She had felt the symptoms coming on for the last 10 minutes, the confusion, the difficulty concentrating, the trembling in her hands. She knew what it meant her blood sugar was dropping dangerously low. She had been stuck in back-to-back emergency surgeries at Scottsdale Memorial Hospital for the past 12 hours, and she had missed both lunch and dinner. As an orthopedic surgeon, she was accustomed to long hours and demanding schedules, but she had made a critical mistake tonight. She had skipped meals while running between surgeries, and now her body was paying the price. She reached for the emergency glucose tablets she always kept in her center console, but her coordination was failing. Her hand knocked the bottle, sending tablets scattering across the passenger seat and floor. The light turned green and a car behind her honked. She pressed the gas pedal, her car moving forward but weaving slightly as her motor control deteriorated. What happened in the next 67 minutes would be captured by Officer Derek Lawson's dashboard camera and body-worn camera in devastating clarity. It would end a law enforcement career, trigger a state-level investigation into police training protocols, result in a $14.7 million settlement, and prove that even a prominent surgeon with type 1 diabetes and a medical alert bracelet couldn't count on police officers to recognize a medical emergency when bias and assumption took over. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, because what unfolds over the next several minutes will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. Dr. Bernice Williams had spent the last 18 years building one of the most respected orthopedic surgery practices in Arizona. At 43, she was the chief of orthopedic surgery at Scottsdale Memorial Hospital, one of the region's premier medical facilities. She specialized in complex reconstructive procedures, particularly trauma cases and joint replacements, and her patient outcomes consistently ranked in the top 5% nationally. Her journey to that position had required extraordinary perseverance. Born and raised in South Phoenix, she was the daughter of a single father who worked as an auto mechanic. Her mother had died from complications of type 1 diabetes when Bernice was just 7 years old. Watching her mother's decline and eventual death had shaped everything that came after. When Bernice herself was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 11, she approached it with scientific determination rather than fear. She learned to monitor her blood sugar meticulously. She studied the physiology of the disease. She became an expert in managing her own condition. She graduated valedictorian from her high school, earned a full scholarship to Arizona State University, where she graduated summa cum laude, then earned her medical degree from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Over 18 years in practice, she had performed over 3,000 orthopedic surgeries. She had published 62 peer-reviewed papers. She had received the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons Award for Clinical Excellence. She served on the board of the American Diabetes Association. For 32 years, she had meticulously managed her diabetes, checking her blood sugar multiple times daily, keeping glucose tablets readily available, wearing a medical alert bracelet at all times, carrying a medical alert card in her wallet. She knew her body. She knew the warning signs of hypoglycemia. She knew how to prevent it and how to treat it. But that Wednesday, a perfect storm of circumstances had conspired against her. She had arrived at the hospital at 5 a.m. for a 7 a.m. surgery, a complex bilateral knee replacement scheduled for 5 hours. By 1 p.m., it was complete. She checked her blood sugar, 82, within normal range. She ate a protein bar and drank orange juice. At 1:15 p.m., she was paged to the emergency department. A 19-year-old college student had been in a motorcycle accident with a severe open fracture. The case was urgent. Without immediate surgery, he could lose his leg. The surgery stretched to 5 hours due to vascular and bone complexity. By 7 p.m., she was exhausted. She checked her blood sugar, 68. Lower than ideal, but not critical. She ate another protein bar and drank juice. She was leaving when another emergency page came. A 55-year-old woman with multiple fractures from a fall needed immediate surgery, ate a granola bar, and headed back to the OR. The surgery took 2.5 hours. By 10:15 p.m., she had been at the hospital over 17 hours. She had performed 3 major surgeries. She had eaten only protein bars and a granola bar, not real meals with complex carbohydrate. She should have checked her blood sugar before leaving, but she was exhausted and just wanted to get home. Her townhouse was only 4 miles from the hospital. She thought she could make it. Within 2 blocks, she knew she was in trouble. Her hands were trembling. Her vision was blurring. Her thoughts were becoming confused. She reached for the glucose tablets in her center console. Her coordination was already compromised. She fumbled, knocked the bottle, watched helplessly as tablets scattered everywhere. At a red light, she tried to reach down to grab one. Her movements were clumsy and slow. The light turned green. A car honked. She pressed the gas harder than intended. Her car lurched forward and weaved slightly. It was enough to catch the attention of Officer Derek Lawson, sitting in his patrol car at a nearby gas station. Officer Derek Lawson, 36 years old, had been with the Scottsdale Police Department for 11 years. His personnel file contained a troubling pattern that his supervisors had repeatedly ignored. 14 civilian complaints over those 11 years, allegations of aggressive behavior during traffic stops, multiple claims of rushing to arrest without proper investigation, reports of dismissing people's explanations without consideration. 3 formal complaints specifically about failing to recognize medical emergencies and treating them as intoxication. Of those 14 complaints, 13 had been reviewed internally and dismissed without investigation. 1 complaint had resulted in a 1-day suspension after Lawson arrested an elderly man having a stroke, booking him for public intoxication. The man suffered permanent neurological damage because of the delayed medical treatment. Even after that incident, Lawson's supervisor, Sergeant Mitchell Hartley, continued to praise him in performance reviews as proactive and committed to public safety. The real story was in Lawson's arrest statistics. He averaged 47 DUI arrests per year, more than double the department average of 21. But his conviction rate was only 58%, well below the department average of 86%. This meant that nearly half of the people Lawson arrested for DUI were later found to be not intoxicated. He was arresting people based on assumption rather than evidence, prioritizing his statistics over accuracy. That Wednesday night, Lawson saw Burness' car weave slightly. To him, an obvious drunk driver. Another easy DUI arrest. He pulled out and activated his lights. Burness saw the flashing lights through her blurred vision. She understood she needed to pull over. She also understood she needed help. She carefully steered to the curb and stopped, her hands shaking on the wheel. She tried to reach for her purse with her medical alert card inside. Her impaired motor control knocked it to the floor. She leaned down trying to retrieve it, movements slow and uncoordinated. Lawson exited his patrol car, dashboard camera recording. He activated his body-worn camera as he approached. The BodyCam would capture everything from his perspective, every word, every action, every piece of evidence he would choose to ignore. He tapped on the window with his flashlight. Burness pressed the button to lower it, then looked up at him. Her pupils were dilated. Her face was covered in sweat. Her hands trembled visibly. Classic signs of hypoglycemia. But Lawson saw what he expected: intoxication. "Ma'am, how much have you had to drink tonight?" Lawson asked, his tone already accusatory, his BodyCam recording. Burness tried to focus. She tried to make her mouth form the words. Her speech centers were affected by critically low blood sugar. I'm sick. I need sugar. I'm diabetic. The words came out slurred and disconnected. To Lawson, who had already decided she was drunk, it sounded like excuses. "Yeah, that's what they all say," Lawson said dismissively, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Step out of the vehicle. You're clearly intoxicated." Burness raised her left arm and extended it toward the window. On her wrist was a silver medical alert bracelet she had worn every day for 32 years, engraved clearly, type 1 diabetic, hypoglycemia risk. Lawson's BodyCam captured the moment perfectly. The flashlight beam illuminated the bracelet. The camera angle showed the engraving clearly, centered in the frame, completely readable. The footage would later show he looked directly at it for 3 seconds. "Please, my bracelet. I'm hypoglycemic," Burness managed, holding her wrist steady in the window. Lawson's BodyCam recorded his response. "Save it for the breathalyzer, lady. Out of the car. Now." He opened the driver's door. Bernice tried to step out, but her legs wouldn't support her properly. She stumbled, grabbing the door frame to keep from falling. Lawson interpreted this as drunken stumbling, not hypoglycemic loss of motor control. "Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle," Lawson ordered. Bernice tried to comply, but her confusion was deepening. "Please, hospital, doctor, diabetic, glucose. You're a doctor?" Lawson's voice was mocking, clearly captured on BodyCam. "Sure you are. Hands on the car. Now." Bernice placed her trembling hands on the car roof. Lawson pulled her hands behind her back and snapped handcuffs on her wrists. Her blood sugar was now critically low, likely in the low 30s. Minutes away from seizures or coma. "I'm going to search your vehicle for open containers," Lawson announced to his BodyCam. He left Bernice leaning against the car, barely able to stand, while he searched the interior. The BodyCam recorded his entire search. He found her purse on the floor and opened it. Inside was her wallet. He examined its contents, holding each item where the BodyCam could record it clearly. Her driver's license, her medical license identifying her as Bernice Williams, MD, licensed to practice medicine in Arizona. Her hospital ID badge showing Bernice Williams, MD, Chief of Orthopedic Surgery. Her medical alert card printed in bold, Type 1 Diabetic. Emergency instructions. If patient is confused, unable to swallow, or unconscious, call 911 immediately. Lawson's BodyCam recorded him reading each item. He looked at them for approximately 5 seconds. Then he placed everything back in the wallet and continued searching. He found the scattered glucose tablets. He picked up the bottle, holding it directly in front of his BodyCam. The label was clearly visible. Glucose tablets, fast-acting glucose for treatment of low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. The BodyCam recorded him reading the label. Several seconds. Then he placed it back. He searched the rest of the car thoroughly. No alcohol, no beer, no wine, no liquor, no open containers of any kind. His BodyCam recorded the entire search, documenting that absolutely no evidence of alcohol was found. He returned to Bernice, barely conscious. "I need you to perform some field sobriety tests. Follow my finger with your eyes." Her eyes couldn't track smoothly. They moved jerkily, inconsistently. Walk in a straight line, heel to toe, 9 steps forward, turn around, 9 steps back. Bernice took 2 steps and stumbled badly, nearly falling. She grabbed the car to steady herself. Her balance was destroyed by critically low blood sugar. 1 leg stand. Raise your right foot 6 inches off the ground, hold for 30 seconds. She lifted her foot and immediately lost balance, stumbling backward. Lawson caught her arm. "That's enough. You're under arrest for driving under the influence. You have the right to remain silent." As Lawson read the Miranda warning, Bernice's legs gave out entirely. She collapsed to her knees, then fell to her side. Her eyes rolled back. The BodyCam captured every second. "Hey," Lawson shouted. "Audio clear on BodyCam. Don't you pass out on me. You're not getting out of this that easy." He grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet. Her head lolled. She couldn't speak. She couldn't coordinate movements. Her brain was being critically deprived of glucose, causing potential permanent damage. Lawson half-dragged her to his patrol car and placed her in the back seat. Bernice slumped against the window, barely responsive. The drive to the station took 18 minutes. His BodyCam continued recording the audio. Bernice labored breathing, incomprehensible sounds as her condition deteriorated. Her blood sugar was now in the 20s, coma, seizures, permanent brain damage, and death, all likely. At one point, Lawson glanced back. BodyCam recording. "Better not puke in my car." When they arrived at the station, Lawson parked and opened the back door. Bernice could barely move. Her body was shutting down. Lawson had to physically pull her out of the car. Her legs wouldn't support her weight. He called for assistance. Officer Amanda Chen, who had 12 years of experience with the department, came out to help. Chen took one look at Bernice and immediately recognized that something was seriously wrong. This wasn't intoxication. This was a medical emergency. "Derek, is she okay?" Chen asked, concern evident in her voice. "She looks really sick." "She's drunk," Lawson said dismissively. "Failed every sobriety test. Can you help me walk her inside?" Lawson said. Chen moved closer to Bernice, examining her more carefully. The excessive sweating, the dilated pupils, the trembling, the rapid, shallow breathing, the complete lack of coordination. "Derek, this doesn't look like alcohol intoxication. This looks medical. Did she say anything about medical conditions?" "She claimed to be diabetic," Lawson said, "but that's just an excuse. They all say that." Chen's eyes widened with alarm. "Did she have a medical alert bracelet?" "Yeah, she had some bracelet, but..." "Derek," Chen's voice was sharp. If she's diabetic and she's showing these symptoms, this is hypoglycemia. This is a medical emergency. She needs treatment right now, or she could die or have permanent brain damage. I'm processing her for DUI, Lawson said stubbornly. She can see the medical staff after booking. No, Chen said firmly. We're calling paramedics right now. Look at her. She's barely conscious. Her breathing is wrong. She can't stand. This isn't alcohol. I know what I saw, Amanda. She failed every test. Because she's having a medical crisis. Chen pulled out her phone and called for emergency medical services directly, bypassing Lawson entirely. This is Officer Amanda Chen at Scottsdale PD Central Station. I need paramedics immediately. Female, early 40s, possible diabetic emergency, severely altered mental status, unable to speak coherently or stand unassisted. Within 4 minutes, the fire department's emergency medical team arrived. 2 paramedics rushed over to where Lawson and Chen were supporting Burnett. The lead paramedic, a veteran EMT named Robert Torres, assessed her quickly and expertly. How long has she been like this? Torres asked. The officer pulled her over about. Chen checked her watch. About 35 minutes ago. Torres pulled out a portable glucometer and pricked Burnett's finger for a blood sample. The meter beeped. He looked at the reading and his expression changed to alarm. Her blood glucose is 28. This is severe hypoglycemia. She's in critical danger. We need IV dextrose now. The second paramedic was already preparing an IV kit. They laid Burnett on the ground and started an IV line in her arm. Torres drew up a pre-filled syringe of 50% dextrose solution, 25 grams of pure glucose in 50 milliliters of solution. Pushing D50, Torres announced, injecting the dextrose directly into the IV line. The effect was almost immediate. Within 6 seconds, Burnett's eyes began to flutter. Within 90 seconds, she took a deeper breath. Within 2 minutes, her eyes opened fully, and she looked around, confused and disoriented, but conscious. What? Where am I? Burnett asked, her voice weak but clear. You're at the police station, ma'am, Torres said gently. You were having a severe hypoglycemic episode. Your blood sugar was 28. We've given you emergency glucose. How do you feel? Burnett's mind was clearing rapidly as the glucose reached her brain. She looked down at her hands, still handcuffed behind her back. She looked at the police station around her. She looked at Officer Lawson standing against the wall. Memory came flooding back. I told him I was diabetic. I showed him my medical bracelet. I told him I needed glucose. He arrested me anyway. Torres looked at Lawson, then back at Burnett. Ma'am, are you a diabetic? Type 1 diabetes for 32 years, Burnett said, her voice getting stronger. I'm a physician. I'm the chief of orthopedic surgery at Scottsdale Memorial. I had been in surgery all day, missed meals, my blood sugar dropped. I tried to tell him. I showed him my bracelet. Torres checked her blood sugar again. It had risen to 62 and was continuing to climb. He removed her handcuffs. Dr. Williams, you were in severe hypoglycemic crisis. At blood glucose of 28, you were at risk of seizures, coma, permanent brain damage, or death. How long were you symptomatic before the officer stopped you? I felt it coming on about 10 minutes before he pulled me over. Burnett said, I should have pulled over immediately. That was my mistake. But I told him what was wrong. I showed him my medical alert bracelet. I told him I was diabetic and needed glucose. Torres turned to Lawson. Officer, she showed you a medical alert bracelet? She had a bracelet, yeah, Lawson said defensively. Did you check her car for glucose tablets or other diabetic supplies? I found some tablets, but did you find any alcohol in her vehicle? No, but she was clearly impaired. Of course she was impaired. Torres's voice was angry now. She was experiencing severe hypoglycemia. The symptoms mimic intoxication, slurred speech, confusion, poor coordination, inability to focus. But she told you she was diabetic. She showed you a medical alert bracelet. Any EMT who saw those symptoms and heard that information would have immediately checked blood glucose and provided treatment. You delayed her treatment by over 30 minutes. At that blood sugar level, every minute without treatment increases the risk of permanent brain damage. The watch commander, Lieutenant Sarah Brennan, walked over. Officer Lawson, my office. Now. Torres removed Burnett's handcuffs and continued treating her. Dr. Williams, you were in severe hypoglycemic crisis. At blood glucose of 28, you were at risk of seizures, coma, permanent brain damage, or death. We need to transport you to the hospital. Take me to Scottsdale Memorial. It's my hospital. I'm chief of orthopedic surgery there. Word spread through the station. The chief of orthopedic surgery had nearly died from hypoglycemia after being arrested instead of given medical help, with a medical alert bracelet ignored. Glucose tablets found, but dismissed. No alcohol in her system. Burnest was transported to Scottsdale Memorial's intensive care unit. The hospital's CEO, Dr. Marcus Peterson, arrived within 30 minutes. Burnest described everything: the surgeries, missed meals, blood sugar dropping, being pulled over, telling the officer repeatedly she was diabetic, showing her bracelet, him ignoring everything. The officer found my medical license in my wallet. He found my hospital ID. He found my medical alert card. He found glucose tablets. He found no alcohol, and he still arrested me. My blood sugar was 28 when the paramedics checked it. I was minutes away from seizures or coma. The hospital conducted a comprehensive medical evaluation. Based on the timeline and recovery rate, medical staff concluded her blood glucose had likely dropped as low as 23 to 26 death or permanent brain damage, highly probable. The 35-minute delay in treatment had been medically negligent and potentially criminal. She had been extraordinarily lucky. Even 5 to 10 additional minutes could have caused permanent neurological impairment or death. The Internal Affairs investigation reviewed Lawson's BodyCam footage frame by frame. The footage showed Burness telling him she was diabetic. The medical alert bracelet clearly displayed to his camera, engraving readable, Lawson looking at it for 3 seconds before dismissing it. Lawson finding and examining her medical license, hospital ID, and medical alert card. The glucose tablet bottle held in front of the BodyCam, label clearly visible. No alcohol found anywhere. Burness collapsing while he dragged her to the car instead of calling for help. But the most devastating evidence came from Lawson's history. Over 11 years, he had arrested 8 people experiencing medical crises. A stroke victim who spent 7 hours in booking, suffering permanent speech impairment. A woman with a brain tumor having a seizure whose diagnosis was delayed, dying 6 weeks later. A man in anaphylactic shock who stopped breathing in the holding cell. Another diabetic in hypoglycemic crisis. A woman having medication reaction. A man having a panic attack. An elderly woman with dementia. An epileptic man post-seizure. In every case, Lawson had ignored obvious medical signs and prioritized arrest. In every case, supervisors had dismissed complaints. Criminal charges came 3 months later. Officer Derek Lawson was charged with reckless endangerment, official misconduct, criminal negligence, and deprivation of medical care. Sergeant Mitchell Hartley was charged with supervisory negligence and obstruction of justice. The trial lasted 5 weeks. The jury watched Lawson's BodyCam footage showing the medical bracelet clearly displayed, medical credentials examined, glucose tablets found, no alcohol present, and Burness collapsing. They heard testimony from the paramedics who saved her life. They heard expert medical testimony explaining hypoglycemia symptoms and why medical alert bracelets exist. They heard from the 8 other victims, and they heard from Burness herself. She testified for 6 hours, explaining type 1 diabetes, hypoglycemia symptoms, her experience that night, the officer ignoring her bracelet and credentials, her blood sugar at 28, how close she came to death. The jury deliberated for 11 hours, guilty on all counts for both defendants. Lawson was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. Hartley received 7 years. Their law enforcement careers were over. Their pensions were forfeited. Arizona issued a statewide mandate requiring all officers to complete training in recognizing medical emergencies that mimic intoxication. Officers were required to check for medical alert bracelets, to ask about medical conditions, to call for paramedics if there was any doubt. The protocol was clear. When in doubt, treat it as medical first. Burness' civil lawsuit settled for $14.7 million. The settlement included mandatory policy changes and the requirement that her case be used as training material throughout Arizona. 3 years later, Dr. Burness Williams stood at a podium at the American Diabetes Association conference. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 35 years. I've managed it through medical school, residency, and 2 decades as an orthopedic surgeon. That Wednesday night, I made mistakes. I worked too long without eating properly. I didn't check my blood sugar before driving. Those were my mistakes, and I own them. She paused, but what happened after that being arrested instead of helped, having my medical bracelet shown to an officer's body cam and told to save it for the breathalyzer, having my medical credentials found and dismissed, having glucose tablets labeled for hypoglycemia ignored, being dragged to a police station while my blood sugar was 28, those weren't my mistakes. Those were failures of a system that should protect people, but instead nearly killed me. I was lucky. Officer Chen recognized what was happening and called for help. The paramedics arrived in time. I survived. But 8 other people encountered the same officer during medical emergencies. 1 died. Others suffered permanent injuries. We need to educate law enforcement about diabetes and other medical conditions. We need to make sure medical alert bracelets are taken seriously as the life-saving tools they are. Because the next person experiencing hypoglycemia while driving might not survive if the officer is like Derek Lawson. The applause lasted nearly 5 minutes. Officer Amanda Chen was promoted to sergeant and placed in charge of the department's Medical Emergency Response Training Program. The case became mandatory training material in every police academy in Arizona. A video was created using Lawson's BodyCam footage combined with medical expert commentary. Every officer in the state was required to watch it and pass certification testing. 6 other states later adopted the training. Lawson and Hartley served their sentences. They learned too late that protecting and serving includes recognizing medical emergencies, and that ignoring them isn't just bad policing, it's criminal. Dr. Bernest Williams returned to her surgical practice. She continued to manage her diabetes meticulously with added redundancy glucose tablets in multiple car locations, a continuous glucose monitor that alerted her phone, emergency contact information in her sun visor, and a strict personal policy never to drive if her blood sugar was below 80. She became a national advocate for people with diabetes who encounter law enforcement. She worked with the American Diabetes Association to create educational materials for police department. She testified before state legislatures in support of laws requiring medical emergency training. And every time she got behind the wheel, she remembered that Wednesday night, the confusion and fear, the desperation of trying to make an officer understand, the terror of collapsing while handcuffed, how close she came to death. But mostly, she remembered choosing to transform her trauma into advocacy, ensuring that the next person with diabetes encountering a police officer during a hypoglycemic episode would be helped instead of arrested. Justice was served, lives were saved through new training protocols, but the price of that change should never have been so high. This case changed policies and saved countless lives. But if you think this story is shocking, wait until you see what happened to the paramedic who was arrested while treating a patient because the officer thought he was being disrespected. That case is even more insane.